the stories we believe are the stories that we will live.
Absolutely. Hello and welcome back to the Pursuing Excellence podcast. My name is Stephanie Ajar and I am your host. Today we have a very special guest on the show. Her name is Morgan Marie and she's been a dear friend of mine for over 15 years now. Now I know I might say that every guest is a very special guest, and honestly, well, they are. They're very special people, and I'm super grateful that they share their time with me and with you all, and I hope that you enjoy all of these shows that we've been putting out. Morgan is a storytelling coach, and she's a speaker as well, and she really aims to help individuals create and own their stories and share them with confidence. And she does a phenomenal job at that. Morgan is somebody who exudes passion, who exudes confidence, and she really does a great job of teaching people how to do the same thing. Through one-on-one sessions and custom workshops, she empowers her clients to clarify their message, connect deeply with their audience, and use storytelling to build trust and connection. And I think that when you watch this and you listen to this, you're going to hear exactly that, and you'll hear how she does it as well. Morgan tends to typically work with entrepreneurs and students as well. She, along with me, is an adjunct professor, and she really does a great job of teaching people how to use stories to connect with their audience and to really get the point across of whatever it is that they're trying to convey, whether it's in an interview or it's in a keynote speech or it's in a business pitch, whatever it might be. She does such a good job of that, and she's helped me with my workshops and the way that I communicate. And honestly, every time I structure a workshop now, or I think about a lesson that I'm putting together for my students, I do it differently because of the work that Morgan has shared with me. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. It has added so much value to my life. And I think in return, it has added value to my clients and my students because of how it's filtered from her to me to them, and the benefit that they gain from it, and the way that people can learn so much better when we use stories. So, enough about that. Let's get into the show. Please welcome the one and only Morgan Marie, the storytelling coach. I'm so excited. I'm like a little nervy.
It's going to be good though. This is like totally, I feel so good about it. And that prayer was perfect. That like sets us up.
Me too. I'm excited. Okay. Morgan Marie, welcome to the Pursuing Excellence podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited to have you. We have conversations often, but they're not usually recorded and they're not usually posted on the internet. So
probably for good reason.
Yeah, actually that's true. So this will be a fun one, and I'm really excited. I would love to tell the people how we met.
Let's do it.
We met our freshman year of high school. I won't say how many years ago that was, but it was a long time ago. And we met in our theater 101 class, or whatever that first year theater, maybe it's called first year theater. Mm-hmm. And I believe that was fate. I believe God was like, these two and our other gal pal, Abby. I believe he was like, they need to be friends and they will be friends. So I'll put them all in the same theater class, which is where they belong. and then the rest will just come to fruition. And it did. And I mentioned this to you last time. We actually recorded a podcast once before, a month ago or so. And neither one of us really thought it was our best work. And not that it has to be perfect every time or it has to be our best work every time, but I personally felt responsible for not leading the conversation in the way that I really wanted to, and in a way that really showcases who you are and what you do to the maximum. I just don't think that I did a good job of that. So thanks for coming back. But anyway, so
I'm happy to be back. And it was both of us because we just get carried away. So today we're going to try to really think about keeping ourselves roped in just a little bit roped in.
Just a little bit.
We can have a part 2 if we need it, because we know that we're talkers. Here we
are. for sure. And we will probably have a part 2 at some point. So anyway, I shared this with you that day that we recorded the first time around. And anyway, I was thinking about this fact that in our theater class, at the end of the semester, we had a play that we performed. And you and I were casted or cast? Cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were cast in these specific roles that, well, I'll say what the roles are or were. I was a clown. And you were it was a story about a circus. So I was a clown in the circus and you were the ringleader of the circus. You were the MC of the circus. And as I was thinking about that day that we were recording, I thought, I'm not so sure that we were acting.
That's so good.
And honestly, it makes a lot of sense because I thought I was such a good actor after that class.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, man, I think I could really do this. Like, this is so much fun. And I think I'm actually kind of good at it. And then I remember my acting teacher, like my my junior year or our junior year of high school, Miss Robillard didn't cast me in a role that I really wanted to be in. And it was a comedic role. And I asked her, like, why didn't I get a call back? Like, can I have some feedback? What can I do better? And she was like, you really brought a little bit too much of yourself to the role. I would like to see you play the character more. And now everything is making sense. I was never acting as the clown. I was just being myself. So anyway, that's why I'm not an actor.
You're gonna have to edit out my laughter, or people are gonna have to mute me, turn the mic down, because I am a loud laugher, and Stephanie makes me laugh more than just about anyone. So I'm so sorry.
Gosh.
We're in for a rip roaring of a good time, but Steph, that's a good story, and that is a little bit too true, a little close to home, right?
It really is, and your role as an MC and a ringleader just makes so much sense. Maybe you were acting. But I don't know, maybe our freshman year theater teacher just really knew the roles that we could play.
You know, that's really interesting. I could see both ways. I think that at that time too, I wasn't who I am now, right? We're talking, you're going to say how many years ago, right? We're talking a long time ago. And I wonder what that version of Morgan really would have been thinking at the time, you know, in that ringleader role. Did I feel qualified to be in it? Did I actually step into that space, or was I fully acting in that way? And I'm really curious of what that actually would have looked like. Probably a combination of the two, right? A little bit of a fake it till you make it thought, but those roles in our assignment at that time, not much has changed, and yet everything has changed, right, Steph?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I definitely want to get into that, and if you want, we could just jump right in. So, I mentioned the ringleader and the MC role being very much a Morgan role. I think the other day I told you this, but the other day I was hanging out with my family, and my mom just said, "How about Morgan?" And I said, "What about Morgan?" And she was like, she said something like, that one knows how to command a room, and she's always been so good in front of people, and she just crushes it with the microphone in front of her. And I was like, yeah, she does. She definitely does. But you weren't always Morgan Marie, the storytelling coach. Maybe you always, at least from what my mom and I have seen, as long as I've known you, you've always been great in front of people. You've always been great on a stage, whether that's as the ringleader in the circus, or Tracy Turnblad in Hairspray. I was
wondering if you were going to go there or not. The Tracy Turnblad,
girl, or in whatever other play show, I can't remember right now. But you've always been great in front of people, but you haven't always been Morgan Marie, the storytelling coach. So I would love to know, first of all, what even is a storytelling coach? Who is Morgan, the storytelling coach? What does that mean?
I work with people in their personal narratives and how to help them support and tell that in their professional lives. And so we've been taught to disconnect our personal stories from our professional world. And I just believe in the exact opposite. I think people crave to know who we really are. And so persuasion is at the centerpiece of all business activity. And so a lot of the work I do is called strategic storytelling because there's a strategy behind the type of stories that we tell. So we all at this point know that storytelling is an important part of our world, right? I didn't invent storytelling. The Bible is a collection of stories. Your favorite person at a Thanksgiving dinner table is likely a very good storyteller. You know, when you're younger and you want to be comforted, you want your parental figures to read you a bedtime story. And so humans are hardwired for connection to stories. And we know that to be true. We feel that we're in the right room. But then there's this element of, okay, now what? And so the work that I do is strategic storytelling. So it's taking the right stories and telling them to the right people at the right time to make sure that you're remembered, because ultimately stories make us 22 times more memorable. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
a smarter, not harder kind of gal. And so I think about the stories we can tell that tell our stories for us. And
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately want your story being shared in rooms that you're not in. If you have a good story, it will be told again and again and again, and you will find yourself in places and spaces that you didn't even enter, but your story is being told. That's the type
Mm.
of work that I love to do.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I have 100 questions about that. But first, I would like to know, how did you land here? I love this idea of strategic storytelling. And I really like what you said about having your story being told in a room that you're not in.
Mm.
Wow. I love that. So before we jump into all of that, I want to know, how did you get here? How did you figure out that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, and speaking with you in particular is really fun because you mentioned you've known me since we were about what, 13, 14,
14?
15,
Yeah,
14.
something like that. Yeah.
And so you met me at a pretty vulnerable time, right? When we're identifying who we are and who we want to become. And, you know, who you are around is the people influence you so greatly, you know?
Mhm.
And so I look back to that time and how grateful I am that you and I crossed paths and that you met me then. But had you met me even a chapter prior to that, you would have met a different Morgan Marie, you
Yeah.
know? Morgan Marie in middle school was a very hard chapter. It's my hardest chapter to read out loud. It's the one that I
Mhm.
really hesitate on. And you can even hear my breath, right? It like kind of picks up. I'm like, whew, right? Because that part of my story is a really challenging chapter of mine. But yet
Mhm.
I look in the mirror every day and I see seventh grade Morgan and I thank her for hanging on. And I tell her it's going to get better. And I tell
Love
her,
that.
just wait till you see what we can do. And I'm
Mhm.
so grateful she hung on and she's
Mhm.
here. But it wasn't always what you just saw 5 seconds ago when I'm light, bright, and happy, right? You can see the emotions
Mhm.
in my eyes. That part of my
Yeah.
story is really critical to the work that I do because I believe that that's the depth and the good stuff, right? So
Mm.
middle school chapters, very challenging, hard for me. But as soon as I hit high school in that way, I really did get into a little bit of stride. And I found that I really identified with connection. You know, I didn't probably name it that way at the time, but
Yeah.
I was involved in just about anything, everything. Same thing in college.
Yeah, you
I was the first child on my dad's side of the family to go so far away from school. Most of my family had chosen to stay at home and go to U of A, and I chose to come up and go to Gonzaga, completely different school across states. And I think that was a big turning point for me in my life,
Mm.
was choosing to go to school so far away. And Gonzaga allowed me to become the woman I am now and challenged me in ways and introduced me to people and thoughts and feelings and emotions that I hadn't experienced before. And so college was really formative for me. And it was there that I met a man named Joe Albert, who
Mhm.
became my dearest friend and close mentor. And he was the head of the leadership program that I came to Gonzaga for. I was very fortunate to be on a leadership scholarship at Gonzaga. And through that, he and I did a lot of work together. And ultimately, his greatest gift to me is that he gave me the profound love of storytelling. And
Mm.
I was introduced to storytelling through him. And it was my sophomore year when I really started to delve into it. And we could spend an entire episode on storytelling in that chapter for me. But ultimately, anywhere you looked on college campus tied to storytelling, I found myself involved in. And I loved the thought of helping other people find connection through storytelling. And we hosted this event called Story Slam that was literally on campus, and students would share real, raw stories of their lives in things that they would never tell a stranger, yet they're telling this whole room of students that are here to feel connected. And I felt the room
Wow.
shift, and I knew there was something there, and I loved
Mhm.
it. And I wanted more of that. And so
Mhm.
ever since then, I've been in pursuit of more of that. And so
Mhm.
the rooms that I create now when I host events on my own, and that way I host a networking event now called Stories Around the Campfire, and it's for heart-led women to come together and create connection around stories. And it's exactly that space. It's that safe space to be heard, seen, and known. And so
Mhm.
all of my work has that through line. And so high school, was in stride a little bit. College definitely found my love of storytelling. I have a master's degree in communication and leadership, and my thesis and my concentration was storytelling and loneliness and leadership tied to storytelling. And
Mhm.
ultimately, a leader opens themselves up and allows themselves to be seen, and someone says, "Me too." They create connection in that, and they no
Wow.
longer feel as alone by
That's
sharing a
cool.
story that they otherwise wouldn't have shared.
Yeah.
And that became another indication for me that I was on the right path. Like, something about
Mhm.
this feels really right. And then
Mhm.
my first career was in local news. I was a local news reporter, and I spent
Yeah,
3 years
you.
on air. And some of my favorite stories to share from that time is I got to follow the Zags to their first ever Final Four. And so I went with them from the Sweet 16 to the Elite Eight to the Final Four in my hometown of
So
Phoenix,
cool.
Arizona. And that was a dream come true. I mean, incredible. I was reporting in my parents' backyard, and it
Cool.
was just, that was a time of my life I look back on with such fondness. And right on the other side of that was returning here to what breaking news really is. And it was the really challenging days. And it was my job to meet people on their worst days and then tell the world about it. And it
Hmm.
was really hard because I would show up to breaking news scenes, and the person that was affected by the tragedy didn't want me there. And the news, police, and fire didn't want me there. And I didn't really want to be there. And
Mhm.
so it was this very uncomfortable season for me because I was like, wait, I'm telling stories professionally. I love stories. This is what it's supposed to be. Hold on.
Mhm.
Like, I quote unquote made it. And then I would leave every day, and I was like, but this doesn't feel good. And
Mhm.
my empathy personally couldn't handle the industry. I wasn't built for it. I couldn't numb myself like it asks you to. And
Mm.
so it was a really hard decision to leave, but ultimately I was really grateful. I had a fantastic leader at the time, a strong woman who I got to share with her how challenging it had been for me and how I had lost myself, and I didn't
Mhm.
know what to do, but I was coming to her in what felt like desperation. And I was confused because I thought, right, there's so many stories in that, but um I was confused because I kept getting told that I was really good at this. And then I was coming home and I would go, but I'm not really good at this. And so that's like that little bit of that, like, full circle, fake it till you make it thought of like acting, right? Like, I could act the part a little bit, and then I would get home and I'd have to like take off the mask. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't know. And at the time I didn't have the right support personally in my world. I just wasn't right. So anyways, I was luckily that I had a strong female leader at the time who said, we want you to stay, and we believe that you are a great representation of our company. What would it look like if you joined our sales team? And
Hmm.
so I joined sales and advertising, and I sold local news for a bit, which was really fun because I had just come off TV. And so I knew our audience so well. And that's really critical to the work that I do now, is knowing your audience and knowing who you're speaking to. And I learned
Yes.
so much in that season of asking those good questions to get really curious and clear on who you're speaking to. And so sales became natural to me. I felt like I was enjoying it, but there was still a little element of fulfillment that I was missing. And I was always curious if there was more.
Mm.
And not before long, Spokane Hoop Fest, the largest 3-on-3 basketball tournament in the world, found me through a mutual friend I am so grateful for, and put my name into the hat to run to be the director of marketing and sponsorship. And so I spent 3 years there with the team. And then in that, so many lessons. I learned even more about storytelling. I learned my now signature keynote and workshop. It's called Ditch the Pitch. And I learned that there, that people care a lot more about the stories we share than the statistics that back them. Sure, those
Mhm.
are important, but people really leaned in when I started to tell good stories about the
Mhm.
organization and the impact on the community. And so again, another little like green flag for me. I was like, oh, I'm onto something. Right. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that now. Right. I'm a college professor. You and I are both adjuncts. And so I tell my students often, like, I couldn't have planned this perfectly.
Yeah.
But now I look back, I'm like, oh, God had a plan. There was a
Totally.
turning point there. There was a turning point there. There was a turning point there. And so I kind of highlight all of those and tell you that that's where I noticed storytelling and those little pins. And I, explain that that's really where my work now was created, is that
Mhm.
it's been built over the past 13 years as I've been professionally studying storytelling and working in storytelling. And Hoop Fest chapter came to a close. COVID happened and shifted a lot for a lot of us and made
Yeah.
us really question what we were doing and where we were going. And for me, I really I had begun to build a business on the side of storytelling. And at the time, it looked totally different than it did now. I'm 5 years in, but I was dreaming at that point. And then the dream became a reality when I was fortunate enough. I had a wait list when I launched, and I was like, whoa, I'm onto something. Okay, I guess
Mhm.
I'm going to lean into this. I don't really know exactly what I'm building, and I
Mhm.
still don't know exactly what I'm building.
You're building it as you go.
Yeah, somewhere in the messy middle, I found my deepest passion, and storytelling is that, and I'm so grateful. So that's the through line in
Yeah.
a janky fashion that we got there.
Yeah, no, not janky at all. I think it's beautiful. What did you wanna do initially when you went to Gonzaga and you graduated? I don't
Mhm.
know that I even know what your
Mhm.
dream job was at the time.
Yeah.
What was your initial goal?
Well, I didn't even study journalism, which
Right.
is pretty wild. I was studying public relations and Spanish, and I thought originally international relations was really interesting to me. I
Okay,
thought about
yeah.
being a foreign ambassador, and
Mhm.
then as I studied international relations versus public relations, I found that I really liked people more than history. And so the people
Mm.
aspect became really intriguing to me. And so a blend of marketing and PR likely,
Mhm.
and probably in the sports world. I was really leaning into wanting to be potentially, which ironically, my sister and I flopped. My sister is 4 years older and she studied journalism and then went into PR and sports. And I studied PR and sports and went into journalism. And she's now in professional sports still and rocking it. And God bless her as a female in sports these days, you know?
Mhm.
So I'm landed exactly where I meant to now, but I really couldn't have planned that out. Yesterday, I was in my final class of the semester actually with my students, and they put me on the hot seat and asked me a bunch of questions. And it's one of my favorite days of the semester. And they had a similar question for me about that of my career trajectory. And I
Mhm.
think we often get attached to feeling, we have to have it all figured out right now. And
Mhm.
that I need every answer immediately. And so if you're a college student or a graduate or recent graduate, or you're in a chapter or a season of your life where you don't have all the answers, I want you to hear me. It's okay.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath, like genuinely set it down. We don't have to have all the answers perfect. Had I tried to even figure out the answers even more, I probably wouldn't have landed here.
Yeah. 100%.
Mhm.
100%. I also tell my students a version of that.
Mhm.
It's so nerve-wracking to be a senior in college and to
Mhm.
not know exactly what you wanna do,
Yeah.
or to maybe know what you wanna do, but not know how you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of my students feel like they have to marry their first job. Like,
Mhm.
"Ugh,
Mhm.
I don't know
Mhm.
if I wanna take that job because then I'll be stuck in X,
Yep.
Y, and Z
Yeah.
forever." And I typically work with or I teach students who are interested in entertainment and the
Mhm.
music industry. And so if they wanna go into management, but their first job opportunity is in publishing or something, They're
Mhm.
like, "I don't wanna take that because I don't wanna work in publishing for the rest of
Yeah.
my life." And I'm like, "Hey, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to."
Yeah. But I identify with that, excuse me, because there's been so many seasons where I've been scared to leave too. I would say that every career I probably stayed about 6 months longer than my heart knew it was time to go. And that's from a number of different reasons, right? I think we're conditioned often that like once you commit to something, like you're committed, right? And you're like, there's that guilt of leaving. And then there's that team of like, I'm on a team, I've committed to this and I don't want to let people down. And I could
Mhm.
come up with so many reasons and stories at the time, right? And then that 30,000-foot view, like you go, whoop, take yourself out of it and really look at the picture of this. And I think there's been really hard seasons where I've gotten really hard advice of like, unfortunately, if you passed away at the end of this month, they or tomorrow, they'd have your position filled by the end of the month. So like we get so attached to having to stay or we create this image around us that if we leave, we've let someone down, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. But there isn't a linear answer to everything, right? Like it's okay that we're still figuring out the journey. So even in earlier, you said a second ago, you said if you're a college or being a senior in college and not having the answers is so nerve wracking. And I would double down on that and saying being an adult in that same way is equally as scary.
100%.
Someone in a
Yeah.
career path that they're confused over or an entrepreneur that is daily trying to reinvent what they're doing. You and I can identify with that. Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's hard to not have all the answers. Like we want this crisp, easy playbook that tells us what's next in life, and that just doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
And you
It
have to be
doesn't.
okay with the chapters that we, again, wouldn't wanna read out loud or the
Mhm.
seasons of failure or the ones that we go, "Ooh, I would have done that a little bit differently."
Sure.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think there are 2 sides of that where you said, "I stayed in a job or a lot of these jobs
Mhm.
6 months too long because I felt guilty if I would have left maybe 6 months prior." And on the other side, there's also a lot of, "I gotta get out of here because I don't like it, it's uncomfortable, and
Mhm.
I just gotta get
Mm.
out within the first, like,
Yep,
10 days," or
yep,
whatever.
yep.
How do you know
Mm.
when it's time to go? How do you know when it's time to leave a job?
Such a good question. My first answer is I believe our gut is our strongest muscle.
Mhm,
So I think your gut knows and it tells you. And if we really listen to our bodies, we have the answers inside of ourselves. And allowing ourselves to get outside of other people's opinions and thoughts. I think I'm guilty of this. I ask a lot of other people for their thoughts and opinions and sometimes that doesn't serve us all that well. And
mhm,
just trusting yourself and knowing what's right for you, you do know. Once you get away from the noise, disconnect, go on a walk, put some headphones in, listen to worship music, whatever it does for you to get away and
mhm,
get clear, you'll know the answer if it's right for you or when the
mhm,
timing is. And then once you do make that decision and you've settled into that, be okay that other people might be uncomfortable with what's best for you.
mhm.
That's a really hard thing in life.
Yeah, it
Doing
is.
what's best for you, knowing that it's not necessarily best for others, or I felt, like, so bad leaving teams that I felt like I had committed to, but then you know what? Staying in a place and not being ultimately fully committed to that isn't a really good teammate anyways.
True,
I'd rather them
true.
have had fresh blood to come in and really want to invest in the mission again and start over, and, you know, I don't know, I think that oftentimes we make things about us that aren't about us.
That's so true. That's so true. A half committed teammate is not a
Mhm,
good teammate.
mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, and
So
nobody wants to feel
even if you
like they're
have to
that
stay,
one.
it's like,
Sorry, say that again?
yeah, I just think even if you feel like you have to stay, it's like, do you have to, or are you forcing yourself to feel that way out of shame, guilt, experience,
Mhm,
whatever someone else
mhm,
says in that way? But that notion, back to your first thought of like the students in their first career, like you don't have to marry your first job is so good. Like it's okay to just try something. And if it's not the
Mhm.
right fit for you, you're gonna learn so much in that
Yes.
experience that takes you to the next space, and you get to be stronger, better, faster from it.
Yes. Yes, totally. So, on that note, you mentioned the handful of different jobs that you had and the through line of storytelling. Maybe at the time you didn't know storytelling was going to be that thread that was woven into all of them. But now you can look back and go, oh, yeah, I got this out of this job. I got this out of this job. And I kind of want to dive into your job at the news for a minute, if you don't
Mhm.
mind.
Let's do it.
What was it like
Mm,
working in the news? You mentioned a little bit about feeling like or maybe just knowing that people didn't really want you there when you're at their house at 4:30 AM or
mm,
whatever it was. So, one thing I think that, people have kind of started to I don't know if become aware of is the right way to put it. Maybe they're just noticing that the news tends to be bad news.
mm,
And I don't know that we were as aware of that
mm,
before COVID, but it
mhm,
seems like around COVID time is when people started to realize like, "Oh, it's mostly bad news.
mm,
There's rarely ever good news on here." So what was that like constantly talking about bad news? I can
mm,
only imagine that if that's your day to day,
mhm,
that's gotta like put a damper on your spirit a little bit. What was it like for you?
mhm, mhm. Everything you're imagining it to be, in that sense, it was. It was
Mhm.
extremely challenging, and it was heartbreaking, and when you care about a community like I had become to love Spokane, it was so hard. I think the challenge in local news is that you live in the community that you're sharing the stories of, and
Yeah.
so every time I would drive by something that I had seen the day before, the week before, the month before, you can't ever really unsee that. And so it
Mhm.
was very hard to disconnect from my work and also the hours that it required for me at the time. I'm a pretty energetic person, so energy does come to me naturally in the mornings, and so it made sense that I was on the morning show, but
Mhm.
also because I worked 3 AM to 11 AM, I had to say no to a lot of things and hours that were different than other people, and I wasn't really able to, uh, feel like my full self ever. So there's an element of that that, like, I wasn't that made me already a little bit unstable is probably the right word, right? Emotionally unstable.
Mhm.
So that when I was experiencing these traumatic experiences alongside the people, because I'm empathetic in that way, I was really experiencing them when I wish that
Mhm.
a little bit more disconnected, I wouldn't have had that. So that is really hard in itself in living in the community, being part of the community, feeling the weight of the community.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you that local news also has this really incredible ability to, like, I sometimes I got to share stories where I changed a small business, and
Oh.
I got to go in and feature a mom and pop that had owned a business in Spokane for 50 years, and they were celebrating their anniversary, and we got to be there and celebrate that. And when people have their story on local news, it feels like they've got their story on this billboard in New York Times Square, and
Yeah.
the value there for a local business was so incredibly fulfilling. So there were those highs, there were those
Mhm.
days that felt really good, but more often than not, you're right. And I think the challenge in news in particular is that we dog the industry in that way and say that, like, it's clickbait or it's challenging because it's negative and negative is what sells. But if you really think about it, what do you use the news for? If you're a mom and you have kids at home and you hear siren, you turn on the news because you want to know, is there something that's going to impact my child's safety? And
Yeah.
so the news is responsible to tell you what that siren is and whether or not there's something that's threatening you in that
True.
way. And so
Mhm.
people's curiosity drives what sells the news too, right? So I think
Mhm.
it's hard because local news has a really hard job with that. Like, how do
Yeah.
you reach the community? But I'll tell you that the most impactful day I felt like I ever was a reporter was, unfortunately, our community experienced a school shooting, and
Mhm.
bring up tears for me in that way, but I felt purpose. I felt like
Mm.
when I was there I was on air for 13 hours straight, I think it was, and we were doing everything we could to get any answer possible to the people to make sure that they knew whether their kids were coming home or not.
Mm.
And that felt meaningful. And so if you were to look at that story from an outside perspective of not being a reporter and wondering again the negativity in that way, ultimately that's an awful story to have to share.
Yeah.
And yet it's a story that also brought and bridged our community together in a way that it never has, in a certain sense too, standing up for what's right moving forward, etc. So there's
Mhm.
like a challenge of a duality, I think, always to a negative story in that sense, but
Yeah.
there's really no way to work around the fact that it was extremely challenging for me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective and the fact that they they have a duty and they have a
Mhm,
desire
mhm,
to help,
mhm,
and maybe myself included, we get a little jaded
mhm,
sometimes
mhm. Yeah.
from hearing the news or watching the news or
For sure. For
yeah.
sure. And I have great respect for my colleagues that are still in the industry. I tell them
Mhm.
that often. Like I see my friends often. I'm like, I can't believe that you're still doing that in the best way possible, that
Yeah.
they're able to. And I think it's like, I just realized, and this is a great lesson for our students too, or anyone listening that might be wanting to reinvent themselves or discover something new is again, I really like, I was told I was really good at it. And so I like felt confused when I left because I was like, wait, if I'm really good at something and I want to, and elements of this feel right to me, maybe I could make it work.
Mm.
But I didn't want a career I could make work. I wanted a passion that I could fulfill every day. And I believe in this word so, so deeply. It's a Jesuit term and it's Latin and it's the term vocation. And it's
Mhm.
the world's greatest need meeting your deepest passion. And when we find the alignment in those two and you come alive through the work that you do, it isn't work. It's passion and it's vocation and it's serving the collective good. And that's what I believe I was called on earth to do is so share stories and help others do the same to create stronger connections that ultimately make us a community that cares more than less.
I love that. I love that. I I think I have found my vocation as well, and I think even in that, there are moments of like, "Am I going in the right direction with this, or should I take it in a different direction?" But just knowing what the need is and what I'm being called to do is such a relief, and it's something that I'm incredibly grateful for. How did you land on storytelling coaching? You
Hmm.
could have taken storytelling in a million different directions with all the experience that you've
Yeah.
had. How did you land on this specifically?
Mhm. Great question. It found me. Like ultimately, I couldn't shy away from the work that I continue to do because I kept kind of questioning myself of like, can I really build a career out of this? Is this
Mhm.
really going to be sustainable and scalable? Can I make a business, or am I really just a strong professional volunteer?
Mm.
And it's taken me 5 years to really get clear on that answer that I finally am proud to say that I've built a business that is supporting my family.
Mhm.
And people need to hear what I have to say. And I
Yeah.
had to get to a space where I believed that and
Yeah.
really lived that to be true. And then you can activate on how you actually bring that to life. Right?
Mhm.
You have to really believe it. And I'm really fascinated by people. We have to feel safe in the next chapter of where we want to go in order for our bodies to allow us to actually physically get there.
Yeah.
Right? Like our
Yeah.
inner critic or our self protection is so good that it will limit us. It will stop us from something that doesn't feel safe. As long as we not given it the tools, the resources to feel like it's going to be okay. And so
Yeah.
I think for years I didn't believe that it would be okay. I was like a scarcity mindset of like, okay, I think I want to do this, but like I don't know how to do this. And then I was like, 3 steps forward or 1 step forward, 3 steps back, as business often is, and I got confused by that. When you have turning points, you have to decide, do you take failure as, you know, something that's really going to set you back, or do you let someone's rejection be redirection? And so
Mhm.
I just kind of like would pivot, I guess, when things would happen. And I'm really grateful now in the sense that my business is, like I said, sustainable and scalable. Whereas a few years ago, it was being written as I went. And that's a hard, scary, most entrepreneurs listening can identify with,
Mhm.
you can identify with. And but storytelling coaching, the coaching in particular, allows for you as my client, you have the answers. You know what you want. You know your stories. It's your lived experience. I'm just helping coach them out of you, identifying which ones are valuable to you, which ones might be valuable to your ideal client. And then the strategy part, which is the consultation, is I like halfway in between my one on one sessions, I go, okay, I'm going to get on the field with you. And then
Mhm.
we break into consultation where I'm like, okay, now what can we do with this? Now that we've identified this story is so important to you, it's got to be important to your people. Let's share it.
Mm.
So the coaching aspect is like, I love, just like any good coach when you grow up with, right? It's like someone that motivates you and inspires you and encourages you and lets you see you for how valuable you are. Because it's your story. You as my client, it's your story in your world that matters. And so if I can help you believe that and you really ultimately do and you share it with confidence, that's the best type of marketing we can come up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Ever since you've been doing this work, I've become much more aware of stories when I'm hearing them, listening to them, or when I'm telling them. And I now know exactly what you mean when you say that stories are the things that connect us, that your
Mhm.
favorite person at the Thanksgiving dinner table is the one that tells the best stories. And it's so true, or maybe the most stories.
Yeah.
It is so true. I was just we were just celebrating Easter over the weekend, and one of my uncles tells just the best stories.
Yeah.
And everybody's sitting around the table just listening to him tell these stories. And I just became so I had a sort of like a meta moment where I like pulled myself out and I was like, okay, he's telling the stories right now. Everybody's sitting around, they're listening, they're engaged,
Yes.
and they keep asking him more questions because they know he's going to tell them more stories. It's not like a yes or no question. It's what happened when this, or what do you think about this? And then he would go into a story, and it just helped us all to connect with him and to learn. And you're right, people learn the best through stories. And
Mm.
that's something that I've been challenged with since working with you and talking with you about this, is incorporating more stories into the way that I teach and the way that I educate. Um, and you are just, it seems like it's second nature to you at this point.
I am
And
beaming inside. Like if you're watching this on video, you can see my smile. But if you're listening to this via podcast, I look like a kid in a candy shop that you just said that. There's no greater love language than someone telling me that when they think about good stories, they think about me.
it's
And I love
true.
you, like even your self-reflection there is like you did it for yourself. You took a step back and you thought, like, what is this doing for this room? What
Hmm.
is it doing for my family? These are stories that now are multi-generational that you'll remember for forever. And all we have to do is ask.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so
Invite.
true.
You know,
Yeah.
people want to share and create that. We just don't necessarily allow the space always for people to feel like they can.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I kind of want to go back, if you don't mind, to a comment that you made about the news and people telling you that you were good at it. You
Mhm,
didn't feel good at
mhm,
it. And you mentioned something about fulfillment, and fulfillment is something that I have become maybe a tiny bit obsessed with, because in my industry, I see people achieving a certain level of success that they've maybe always dreamed of, or they've dreamed of since they were a kid.
mhm,
And then there's a lack of fulfillment. This doesn't always happen,
mhm,
but I do see it
mhm,
more often than I would like to.
mhm.
And when we have this idea in our minds of, when I get that thing, or when I reach this accolade, or I achieve this goal, then I'll be happy. And then we achieve the goal and we get the accolade and the reward and whatever, and then we're not, and we're
Mhm.
unfulfilled.
Mm.
That to me, it's heartbreaking, honestly, but
Yeah.
it's so common
Mhm.
that we do that just as humans.
Sure.
And you said something about lacking fulfillment in the news.
Mm.
And I remember at that time when you were when I almost said cast in the role, when you
Yeah,
were when you were
accurate.
yeah, pretty much offered that job and you accepted that job, it was like, "Oh, this is perfect for Morgan.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
this, she's gonna be so good at this."
Mhm.
From your perspective at the time, maybe before you started or as you were starting, did you think that that was going to be a source of fulfillment or something for you that it didn't end up being?
For sure. When I first began, it was exactly as you said, it was so exciting, and it
Mhm.
was so flattering. I mean, there's no greater role than to represent a station with your full face and being, and that they trust you, right? There's such a trust there, is that I'm live on TV. Whatever I say represents all of this behind me. And
Mhm.
so there was such excitement in that and pride, and it felt cool because it had that like whoa aspect to it, but
Mhm.
then on the reverse of that, it comes with so much. And I think you talk about like your clients and the weight of the industry itself is like it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Mm.
And the more we create an image of how we think things should be, the harder it becomes when they aren't, right? It's
Mhm.
expectation versus reality. And
Yeah.
I think I put this like dream image on what it would mean to be a reporter. And were there things that came with that were super cool? Absolutely.
Sure.
But were there other things that came with it that were incredibly challenging that I couldn't even probably put words to the things that I saw and felt at the time? Yes. And so
Mhm.
that lack of I think somewhere in between there is where I began to feel not as fulfilled. And you know maybe it was more values driven, right? There's a lot of like ethics I think that I come back to of like the work that I do now, and I'm able to create and sustain my own business with my own mission, vision, and values, and I can come back to that every day. And
Mhm.
even as an entrepreneur, I have a board of directors that are like my
Mhm.
teammates in life, and I check with them of like, hey, is this in line, is this like with my values, is this getting me closer to what my mission of my business is, our vision here for the storytelling coach long term. And
Mhm.
when you work for an organization like that the mission isn't yours, like you become attached to it because you care about it, but it wasn't mine in that way. And I think I was like the fulfillment of like, hold on, like there's more here for me, right? I think a term I wrestle with often is like I really felt like I was made for more. And I didn't know what that
Mhm.
more was, but I was made for more. And I still feel that. I still know, even in my day to day, like I'm made for more. Like I feel fulfilled in my everyday life now, but I don't feel full. I don't
Mhm.
feel like, yep. And maybe I never reached that. That's part of the pursuit of excellence, to use your title of your podcast, right? Like I've always been someone that strives for more, asks the questions, wants to grow and become better. I ask for feedback all the time. I want to know how I can grow and serve better. Did I say something that offended you that could make that certainly wasn't my intent. How can I become better? Like I always am asking those questions, and that to me is fulfilling in the sense that I actually get to now kind of like self identify what feels good and what doesn't, versus at the time I was identifying, does it work for the station or not, or for
Mhm.
the industry or the not, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
really, there wasn't that self evaluation. And obviously now I'm 31 and have great context to who I am as a human and what I really stand for and what matters to me more than anything. And I don't know that I could have articulated that as well at the time either. And
Yeah.
so I think I would say too, the closer you get to yourself and your own, like I think everyone should have their own mission statement, whether you own a business or not. You as a human should have your own mission statement. What do you stand for?
Mhm.
Like, what do you want other people to share about you? Earlier, I was asked, I shared this with you on a different podcast. I was asked, what's the story you want told about you? And I thought, what a good question. And I
Mhm.
didn't have a good answer. So Morgan's homework is to have a story that I want told about me in that way. And now I've gone 100 different directions with your original question, but
Okay.
that fulfillment, I would say I'm in constant pursuit of, but it feels different now. I've landed a little bit differently than at the time. It felt so different.
Yeah, yeah. One quick thing and then I'll ask my follow-up question. Um, your good or not good answer is subjective, I think. I think it is because the answer that you told me, and maybe I'll ask you about that in a second, but the answer that you told me, I think is a great answer. You might be like, what in the heck was I thinking? But I think it's a great answer because it does show your humanity. And actually, that's kind of the direction I want to go next. In finding fulfillment, I think we will inevitably, excuse me, let me rewind. In seeking fulfillment, we will inevitably find growth.
Mm,
What I mean by that is the process of being fulfilled requires growth and it requires a little bit of resistance and challenge and stress
mm,
in the best way.
mm,
But when we're in it, it does not feel like the fun thing to do. It does not feel like this is going to be the thing that propels me forward. It feels like this is the thing that's going to crush me.
mm, mhm,
And you've had moments, I would say a lot of moments in your career in the past where it wasn't perfect.
mm,
It was challenging, it was stressful, and maybe I'm talking like at that mark where you after that was the 6 months too long.
mhm,
Um and I've seen that you've always been striving for excellence in every job that you've ever had, whether it's a consulting job or it's at Hoop Fest or it was on the news. Everything that you do, from my perspective, you do with a level of excellence or you strive for a level of excellence. But what I've noticed is that when you do strive for excellence, you're not striving for perfection,
mm,
which I think is how or what propels you further and higher even more.
mm,
Something that I see in my students and my clients and in myself is this desire to pursue excellence, but it gets hindered at times by the idea of perfection. And
mm,
when you're on the news,
mhm,
it seems like those people have it all figured out and it's all perfect. They have their script, they speak with eloquence,
mhm,
they have a wide vocabulary. It seems perfect,
mhm.
but I know that it hasn't always been perfect. Um so so my question is, sorry, I kind of went in a long
Don't track
circle there. I was maybe taking the scenic route for this question, but the question is
it. It
the
looks
question
beautiful.
is yeah, it does. Thanks. The question is, what are some of those moments of growth or challenge that you can look back on now that if they hadn't happened, you wouldn't have or you won't be or wouldn't have been as fulfilled today as you are now. So
Yeah.
what are those key moments of growth and challenge that you look back and you're like, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today.
So good, so good. The first scene that comes, I'll share some stories. The first
Okay,
scene
please
that comes
do.
me is I fell backwards into TV. I was actually a assignment editor at the time. I was on the assignment desk and I was the one that was receiving the press releases and I was to determine whether or not they were newsworthy. That was my job at the time. And I was
Mm.
had just come off a fresh internship and they hired me and I was so excited to be hired. And so I'm doing anything, right? And I'm reading through the press releases and I'm sitting on the assignment desk and it's the middle of summer and it is fire season up here in the Pacific Northwest. And our producers had a little bit of an oversight to where they had sent out all of our talent to the fires. Everyone
Mhm.
had left the newsroom. Well, that left no one in studio to be able to toss out to the anchors, right? Toss out, send the story out from the newsroom to all the people on the fire. I was not on TV at the time, and I had my news director come over to me and she said, "You want to be on TV, right?" And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like I'm learning. I'm 2 months into being here. And she's
Mhm.
like, wrong answer. You want to be on TV, right? And I thought, maybe, right? I'm like, yes. Okay. So my hair is in, Stephanie and I went to high school together. We went to an all girls high school. That's contextually important. If you're watching this video, my hair looked like this, top of my head,
We had a name for it.
the
Yep, the
Xavier
Xavier bun.
Yeah, and I was like this on the assignment desk, and she's like, "I need you to go to the makeup room. I need you to let your hair down, and you're going on TV." And I had never read from a live prompter ever. I didn't study journalism, as I said earlier. I had zero clue what I was doing, but I had to decide right then, who do you want to be, Morgan? What do you want to be known for? Like, step in or step out. The show must go on. So it's
Mm.
either you or they're going to find someone else. And so I went to the makeup room and I took my hair down and I got ready and I read from a prompter for the first time ever on live TV. And it certainly wasn't perfect, but it happened. And I remember I went into her desk or into her office afterwards and she said, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you want to be on TV?" And I said, "Yes." And I signed my contract 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So my first time on TV was already not perfect. And I was already like, whoa. But I realized in that moment, like, I don't know if I realized then. I look at it now with the framework of like complete gratitude for that moment and myself and the ability to step into that. But like, could have been so scared of that, right? Could
Mhm.
have not stepped in, could have said, I don't know how, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah.
I don't who knows what that would have that moment right then could have been the moment that actually made my reporting career happen.
Yeah.
Potentially. Who knows if I
Yeah.
would have gotten the opportunity again or what that would have looked like or how many years it would have taken me to break through. But the fact that it was presented to me and I took it on and it was not perfect. I remember afterwards going like, oh my gosh, like I don't even want to watch that ever again. I don't think I did, you know? So there's
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah.
The
I
second
think
little
sorry, really quickly, I think you very easily could have said to yourself, "I don't have the training. I didn't study journalism. I've never been on TV.
for
This
sure.
is too much too soon.
Yep.
I need some time."
Yep.
And who knows what that could have done.
Yeah. Time could have been for forever that I would have never then had the opportunity
Yeah.
had I not just jumped
Yeah.
in. And I
Beautiful.
and so that story in particular stands out for me. The second is that I was in a breaking news scene a year and a half later, maybe 2 years later, and
Mhm.
at that time I had gotten a little bit better.
Uh-huh.
Kind of knew what I was doing, and I was out in field, so there is no script. And unfortunately, there was a breaking fire scene. It was in the middle of the morning. It was 4:30 a.m. and pitch black, and my photographer is there in front of me, and it's a teaser, right? So it's like you say what's coming up next, and so it's very fast. And so I say I'm live at a structure fire, although I don't say structure fire. I flip structure fire, and so I actually say the F word, Stryer, and not my finest moment. The bright light in front of me was already bright, but the photographer's eyes behind it were like the brightest things I've ever
No.
seen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, do I apologize when it comes back on? Do I run away and say like, "Oh," I quit, like what do I do? Do I own it? Do I not? And ultimately it's 30 seconds before it comes back to you. Like there's no time to check in with anyone or get advice. And so it's just trusting your gut and allowing myself to like take a deep breath, as I said earlier, right? And I laughed and I said, I'm live at a structure fire. And I said it like that in hopes that someone watching at home laughed alongside me and thought, gosh, she is human. And I like to think that that made me 10 times more relatable than any story I could have told them on any other day, is me just making a mistake on air live. And now I'm on the radio, and every day my show runs from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I for sure make a mistake on air every single day, and it's okay. And I think about someone driving in their car, laughing alongside me, going, "Oh, that's Morgan Murray in the midday." And that's what I want to be known for. It's okay to make the mistakes and not be perfect. And that didn't happen overnight, Steph, right? Like that isn't
Yeah,
something that I'm
true.
like, oh, and it's so easy. Like in that day of the news, I for sure went home and cried after I said the F word. I for sure had a moment about it and was like, I should
They're
quit
not
and
laughing at
come
you.
back. And when I first began in radio, I remember wanting my show to feel crisp, right? We all want that I guess perception that we have it together. And then I guess I would question, why do we really want that?
Mm,
If people don't connect with perfection, what are we striving for anyways? So
correct.
I challenge myself and my own inner critic now every day of like, show up messy. And like, I just launched a membership program in November, which Steph is part of and knows all about. And it's a women's network online. But like, when I launched it, I was super transparent. I just said, hey, I don't have all the answers. Like I'm launching because I know it is time and I'm trusting that it is time. And I'm going to put this out there, but know that things are going to change and grow and adapt and morph. And I have changed a lot since I began, and the right people are in it so they're okay with the changes that happen in that way. Similar
Mhm.
to anything in business, right? Like as long as you're transparent and you say and share, then your right people, it won't be for everyone, but
Right.
your right people, it will be okay for, and they'll connect more to you the less perfect you are, because no one is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true and it's so good. Showing up messy is so much more relatable than perfection. I
Mhm.
think about young people and us too. I mean, we're young too. We're still young.
Yeah, yeah, come on, who
Yeah.
you saying
Woo,
now?
I gotta be careful with my words. Younger people
Mhm.
in their 20s who
Yep,
maybe or teens are maybe following influencers or whoever on different social media platforms and they see a version of what they think might be perfection and it creates uh, a sense of lack in their
yep,
own lives,
yep,
feeling like geez, they have all this, that, and the other put together, and it's the keeping up with the Joneses thing.
yep, yep.
But we really relate more to
Mhm.
the people who are a little bit more messy and a little bit more, dare I say, real or authentic, maybe, where they show a little bit more of
Yeah,
who they are, and it's not all perfect and yeah, it's just not all perfect. We relate more to the people who are a little bit more like us.
yeah, absolutely, right? And
For
so if
sure,
you
yeah.
believe that to be true and you're listening right now and you think, "Oh, yeah, that's true of other people," allow yourself permission to believe that about yourself too.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
One of my favorite things, I speak often, I'm on stage and I get up there and I love to just ruin their image they have about me. I just love to just break it down. I'm like, all right, listen, if you created an image of me that I have it all together, let me tell you three things from this morning that will show you that I don't.
Oh, I love that.
I just do it. And I'm like, all right, so now that we're good, we're good. And then we go
That's
into the
so
workshop.
good.
Like we all create these stories, and the stories we tell ourselves are super powerful, right?
Yes,
I believe
yes,
this to be true as like a crowning thing here is that like the stories we believe are the stories that we will live.
absolutely.
So if you believe that you are unworthy, not enough, going to fail, right? If you're afraid of public speaking and you go up to the next public speaking event, you say, I'm going to fail, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, and you tell yourself, Well, humans, we're evidence-based. You'll find every evidence possible to tell yourself that's true and you'll run with it.
Mhm.
I challenge us. The stories we believe are the stories we live. And if you want to live a different story, you absolutely can start today, right now, this exact minute. Start telling yourself a different story. You'll start to believe a different story, and then you will live a different story.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm, like, trying to not laugh because I literally did a whole lesson on this in my class this semester, and I
Yes.
usually will weave it in, but this time I was like, I really feel like I need to drive this home, and then again yesterday in the last class, I reiterated it
Yes.
with an exercise because it's so important. It's vital,
Mhm,
like, actually vital.
mhm,
The stories that we tell ourselves will be the stories that we live, and if you wanna change your life, change your story.
mhm, mhm.
That's just it. That's just
Like,
it.
period, mic drop.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Um, on the topic of social media and perfection, and then we can switch gears here. Something that you said in the membership on maybe it was like the first or second group that we had, you said, "Instead of just creating content,
Mhm.
create connection."
Mm.
And I think that's just a perfect little way to sum up that idea that we relate so much more to the messiness than we do to
Yeah.
the
Well,
quote
and I
unquote
think
perfection.
we overcomplicate, like, when we say, like, "Oh, share your story," it's like, it doesn't have to be your entire story, like, birth until now and every detail. Like, I'm talking about the day-to-day stories. I'm talking about, what sports team do you follow because you love them so much? Or if you have kids and they're running track right now and you're so proud of them running track, and I want you to tell the story of how when they failed their first meet, you help them get back up. Like, that story, telling them someone that story about your kids in your life right now tells them way more about you than anything else you could do statistically to prove the work that you do. Right.
Mhm,
And so I love just encouraging people that, like, if you think that you don't have stories to share, or your life's too boring for stories, or you don't know which stories to share, like, take a step back and think about, like, what moment made you laugh in the past few days, like belly laugh. That's a good
mhm,
story to share. What story made you cry? What moment made you cry and made it feel really real to you? It's a great story to share, right? You can identify these stories, these little tiny micro stories, and start there. Then
mhm.
you'll build into the bigger stories that feel like they tell more about you and share, right? But
Sure.
we can infer and find so much out about one another just by sharing a quick little story. Even you think about that news story, that first one, talk about being on news for the first time without a prompter, like, that told you a lot about me without
Yeah,
me having to tell you about me.
totally.
And I would way rather someone that has a hard time advocating for themselves in general, let the story do the hard work for you. It makes you
Yeah.
22 times more memorable. Hello,
Smarter, not harder.
let's go.
That's it right there.
Mhm.
Okay, well, on that note, Morgan, how would you suggest that people use these stories strategically? You mentioned that the work that you do involves strategic storytelling. So let's say I'm about to graduate from college, or maybe I just did, or I'm interviewing for an internship or something. In an interview, or maybe I've been out of school for a long time and I'm just looking for a new job, but maybe I've been stuck in the same job or same career for a while and I want to pivot, but I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there that I don't know, but I think I could be good at it, but I just don't know. But I'm interviewing. I'm going for it. I'm channeling my inner Morgan Marie
Yeah, you
and I'm
are.
just going
You're
for
hearing
it.
me cheer for you as you walk into the interview is what you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I'm that person, whoever he, she is, and I want to use a story instead of when the interviewer asks me a question, instead of telling them that I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that and I could use some improvement on this,
Yep.
how could I use a story in my interview
Yep.
to let that speak for me?
Yep. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Every single interview question has a story we can prepare for. I love this question because we often go into interviews and we're like so nervous. We don't know what they're going to ask, right? We tell ourselves, I don't know how to prepare. I'm so scared. And I say, yes, you do. We know exactly how to prepare. We can guess that they're going to ask at least 5 of these questions, right? Tell me about yourself. What's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? Why do you want to work here? What's something you could bring to this team, right? That's 5 of maybe 10 questions total that we can already prepare for. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're nervous immediately going to interview, like, already 50%, we can already get 50% of the questions right. Like, that's
Yeah.
pretty good, if
Yeah.
not even 70 or 80, right? I think we can really even push that and, like, prepare more for what we think they're going to ask, right?
Mhm.
But what's challenging when someone says, "Tell me about yourself," we often go back to, like, well, I was born in California and then I moved to Arizona and then I was there for a while and all of a sudden we tell like a 10-minute story that doesn't tell anything.
So true.
So instead of telling our origin story and going back in that way, I would say something like, as a kid, I was nicknamed Curious George. I always asked questions. In fact, when I was younger, I'd rarely make it back to my friend's room. I would get stuck in the kitchen talking to their parents because I had so many questions. I wanted to hear about their day and their lives and what was going on. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was the beginning formation to me asking really good questions that I still ask now every day with my clients in my storytelling coaching and consulting. And so I'm deeply passionate about storytelling and connecting. And if I were to tell you anything about me, that's the most important thing I want you to know.
Okay.
So I went from,
That
okay,
was hold on, sorry, just a second. You got me from the first line. I
now,
was nicknamed Curious George as a kid. I'm already like, "Okay, and what?" Now I know you're curious. Now
mhm,
I know you ask questions. Now I know you can make conversation with anybody,
mhm,
and they don't have to be your peer.
mhm.
Now I know that you're friendly, and you're bubbly, and you're personable. That just told me so much about you. I'm sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Well, let me tell you, one, like, thank you for saying that. And also, it's not my first time saying this.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for
Well, but
sure.
for people to say that, like, that's what it takes. It's practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And the more we tell our stories and get comfortable telling them, the more they flow out so easily and they tell more for us, right? Like, I love that. Like, that's amazing that you felt that way. And it didn't come out exactly how I would have wanted to. That wasn't perfect. That wasn't by exact script, right? It
Mhm.
was just, it got the idea across and it told you what's really important. And I think that's what we miss in interview questions is we try to give the perfect answer because we practice so hard with our note cards the night before and we go through every question, right? Morgan told me to prepare for all these questions. So now I'm going to memorize my exact answer to every question. And then I get in front of them and I go halfway through it and I forget what I'm saying next. And now I don't know what I'm doing because I prepared for this, but now I look not prepared, right? And now I'm in my head and I'm not in the room.
Mhm.
That's the worst thing we can do in an interview.
Yep.
Interviews are two-way streets. You are
Yeah.
in control of the interview just as much as they are in control of the interview.
Mhm.
You're asking questions back to them. You want to know if this is the right fit for you. And so allowing it to be that dialogue, right? What I just did in that way, that's what I want you to really know about me is that storytelling creates that deepest connection. Boom. Then I put it back in their hands and they go, wow, thank you.
Mhm.
They come back, right? They create that like symbiotic relationship. I often ask questions in the interview, even so, to create that rapport. Because now they're
Mhm.
seeing me in the workplace with them, and that feels good.
Yeah.
Right? So that was another thing I got from my time at Hoop Fest. My former boss at the time told me in the applicant pool something that made me stand out was that I was the only person to ask if I could see the office. I asked if I could walk around. I wanted to
Wow.
see where I would be working and what that looked like and who I would be surrounded by, right? It was
Mhm.
important to me to actually envision myself there to see if it was right.
Yeah.
And he said that was game changing for him. That was just me being present in the room. Don't be in your head, be in the room and
Yeah.
trust yourself. Right. So that's one example of a story. You asked a really great question about my strengths as well, or my weaknesses in that way. Instead of saying I struggle with time management, I would say that I'm someone that is deeply passionate about a lot of things. And something that that's been brought to attention in the past is that I have, my hands in a lot of things, for example. And then I would go into an example from college when a senior I was a freshman and a senior came over and wrote on a notepad NO and turned it around and gave it to me and he said, "Learn those words now, you'll thank me later." And I don't know that I ever did. I didn't really learn the word
Mm,
super well in college, right? I was super over involved in what I considered the best way, but also it made me not really as present in some of the places and spaces that I would have wanted to be in because I was always needing to be somewhere else. And so for me, that shows X, Y, and Z, right? You go into your
yep.
interview example and you use
Yep.
that, and now someone sees, and when they write down weakness, they don't write down time management, they write down passionate and involved and wants to learn and grow, and they remember the story, and that makes them remember me. Think if they're doing an interview of 20 people in a day, they're going to remember Curious George, aren't they?
For sure. For sure. That's good.
Thank
Okay. Now we're kind of role playing here.
you.
Now let's say you were in an interview in the past. Now you're pitching your services
Ooh,
to a potential client or buyer or whatever.
mhm,
Okay. How would an entrepreneur or salesperson
mhm,
use a story
mhm,
to pitch their product or their services?
mhm.
Don't
Use
people want to hear, sorry, don't people want to hear how effective and how great the product and the service is compared to all the other ones? Like how do you put that in a story?
Mhm. They certainly do, but they don't know that they actually want to hear your experience through other people's lens. So they
Mm,
want to find themselves in someone else's story, right? And so when you think about your pitching yourself, I always say ditch the pitch and tell a story instead. They
I
will
love that.
connect with that story 10 times over, right? So tell a client success story. When you talk about say it's for you, for example, Steph, and you say that,
Mhm,
you're a mental health performance coach in that
mhm,
way instead, and then someone goes, so what do you do?
mhm,
Right? And so instead you get to say, I had a client that came to me and they presented this problem and this is what we did to work through that. And then on the other side, they became this. And that's what I want here for you. Right?
mhm.
So it's connecting a client success story, showing the work that you do, and then taking them into it and saying, and that's why I'm here to present that to you. Right. And so people often feel like they have to give like this elevator pitch that's so perfect, that has this like crisp beginning, middle, and end. And it has a strong call to action and all the things that are so important. And I say,
Mhm,
yes. And I would
mhm.
way rather you tell a story and create the connection than I would for you to sell something that then you have to stand behind when they're trying to ask questions about you, right? They want to know about you truly, whether they know it or not. Because if you think about five estheticians on one street, they do the exact same thing, all five of them, equal credential, equal business license.
Mhm,
What makes me walk into this one versus this one? It's their story.
mhm.
It's their personal experiences. It's their connection of who they know, how I know them now, and I feel connected to them and feel comfortable with them. But I wouldn't know that I was comfortable with them unless they told me something that was special to them that I could feel that was special to me too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Ditch the pitch, tell a story. I love that. I love that. In fact, I told one of my clients about that the other day. She's an entrepreneur and oh gosh, I just love this. So, she was talking to me about how she's really good in front of investors, like really good with helping them get excited about the product and getting them involved in wanting to invest in what she and her business partner are doing. And she was telling me how great she is at that in person. But
Oh.
then she had to write a deck. She had to
Mm.
write a pitch deck with all the statistics and all the numbers and the blah 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 blah. And she was like, I'm not good with writing.
Mm.
It's just not my thing. I'm just so much better in person when I'm having conversation with people. And I said, I essentially asked her a series of questions to get to the root of why is she so good at that
Mhm.
in person. And she was like, because I just tell the story. I just tell the story of the product and what it does and how it began, and people really gravitate toward it and they love it. And I was like, so in your deck, what if you ditch your pitch and tell the story? I didn't use those exact words, but I said, my good friend Morgan is a storytelling coach And she quite literally tells us to ditch the pitch and tell a story. And that's what you've already been doing. And you're so successful at it. Why not just copy and paste that into this deck that you're about to send out to these investors? And she was like, oh my gosh, that is why I'm so good at this. And that's what she did.
Oh,
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And I think it's brilliant and it's so effective. So now that we know different scenarios that we can use stories in, and there are probably 500,000 that we
oh,
could
for
talk
sure.
about
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
wanted to. But I want to know how to craft a story.
Mm.
How do we take an experience and mold it, shape it,
Yeah.
work on it, and turn it into a beautiful story? You mentioned practice earlier, but I would venture to say there's a little bit more than practice that goes into it. Sometimes people, including myself, will give too many details. Sometimes people, including myself, will give not enough details. So how do we shape a story that can be effective in this way where it will sell the product, or it will sell you for the role, or it will just bring connection? How do we shape and tell a story?
So, so good. Start with what's really important. What's the one thing you really want them to take away from this, right?
Mhm.
Get really clear. What's the driver of this? What's the aha moment? What's the climax of the story? What's the lesson learned? What is so important that they understand? Work with just that, right? And then we build. We build from that. As long as we know that we have one end goal, because that's the challenge. And like, how much do I share? What do I share? What do I not share? You'll know based off of your end goal of like, does this check up or against this one thing I want them to take away, right? And so
Mhm.
if it doesn't add value to that, it's probably unnecessary. And
Mm.
so you got to create some kind of gauge for yourself. But the preparation comes with really like that Curious George mentality of ask more questions of yourself. Ask I like to think about like a movie, like close your eyes. Okay. Tell me the story. What happened? Who was there?
Mhm.
What was it like? What did it look like? What were the details? What season was it in? What year was it in? Right? Is that identifying? Some of these things are very helpful to identify contextually for people to be able to follow a story, right? We have to give people the right turning points in a story to make sure they're along for the story with us. And traditionally, there's the rising climax and then there's the falling.
Mhm.
Not every story follows that exact formula, but for you to begin in that way, if you don't know it all where to begin, and you're like, okay, Morgan, I want to think about a story for an interview, just like you said, and I want to think about that story of tell me about yourself. Okay. I want you to think about what you really want them to know. I believe storytelling is the number one way to create connection. Okay. If I believe that to be true, how do I work backwards to provide evidence of that
Mhm.
to make that true? So when I was younger, I was Curious George. Okay, that's important. When I was a news reporter, okay, that's important. When I go through these things that are turning points in my timeline, now those are details I have to tell in order for someone to really understand that storytelling is the deepest way to create connection.
Mhm.
So there has to be that through line, right? Now, there's things in storytelling that are nuanced, like really special things about like bookends, right? A bookend in a
Mhm.
storytelling is that you start and end in almost the same place. And so you bring someone back to that. That can be a really powerful story, but that requires practice because you have to know where you begin and where you end,
Right.
right? The Mark Robbins of the world, they tell that same story every single day 10 times. No
Mhm.
wonder their stories are so effective.
Mhm.
When you expect yourself to just be a good storyteller at the dinner table tomorrow night and you haven't told the story yet.
Right.
So
Right.
so asking because the more you tell it out loud too, the more you learn from other people. Like if you're really practicing to be the pitch, right? I want you to pitch that to 10 people before you pitch to the person you're pitching it to.
Right.
But practice how it sounds. You and I have done this work together, and I challenge
Mhm.
you to do it for 10 people. Go out there
Mhm.
and hear because their reaction when they laugh at certain moments, when they pause at certain moments, when they have another like curious question, like their face does this, you're like, oh, that part didn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
Right? Other people will tell you more and you will hear it yourself. I love voice notes, voice memos. Record yourself telling the dang story. You'll hate it. That's good news. That's good news that you hate the way it sounds. That means you can work on something.
Uh-huh.
but we can't expect ourselves to be good at something we don't practice trying to become better at.
Totally. Totally.
So I don't know, did that answer the question with the formula of how you do that?
Yeah, yeah, I really like that idea of starting with this is how I like to think about it. This is your recipe for
Yep.
how to make a good story. You start with one important lesson.
Mhm.
Then maybe you have 2 or 3 really important detail. Let's say it's a short
Yep.
story. 2 or
Supporting
3.
evidence, as I call it.
Yeah, you're supporting evidence. Okay. And then maybe you sprinkle in a little bit of your humor or a little bit of your seriousness or a little bit of your wisdom or a little bit of your whatever it is that's special to you, sprinkle to taste,
Yeah.
and or whatever. And then you have your bookends,
Yep.
maybe front, back,
Yeah.
and then you practice it
Yeah.
and you work that recipe over and over again until you get it the way that you like it.
For sure.
And then you can make it for someone else and you present your story
Absolutely.
to
And
your
I
friends
think
and
every
whoever.
single time you have a story in business too, I want you to have a long version, a medium version, and a short version. Because that same story can be told in a full-on keynote where you've got 20 minutes to talk and share the
Mhm.
whole story. Then it can also be shared in social media in a quick little 2 minute, and then it can be shared even less than that in 30 seconds actually these days on social, right? And so we can use that same story strategically in multiple different places and spaces, more detail for the longer one, less detail in the smaller one, right? But we have to give that big first full version to be able to pare it down, or we have to start small and build to make it become big.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that, like, I gave the example earlier of me and the structure fire, right? Like, I could tell that story 5 different ways.
Mhm.
I could start in the action and say, there I was, 4:30 a.m., bright light in front of me, but my photographer's eyes were even brighter as they burst open as I accidentally said the F word on TV.
I just got the chills.
Completely different than how I started it when I told it earlier. Same story,
Yes.
different start.
Yes.
So, who's my audience? Who am I speaking to? How long do I have with them? All of those questions come flooding through my brain when I think about how I want to start it, where I want to take it, and how much detail I want to give.
Yeah. Woo. It's a good thing you do this for a living because dang, you're good at it, girl.
I love you.
So
You are
good. I
so
love you too.
encouraging. I'll do this all day, every day with you.
Sign me up. Speaking of that, I think we're getting close to time, but I think we kind of have to do a part 2
Let's do it.
because there's so many more questions that I have for you and so much more that I think you have to share that
Mhm.
people need to hear.
I
So,
Yeah, I would be honored to. And also, if something in today's episode spoke to you, I would love to hear that. Reach out to me on social
yes.
through Steph, with Steph, together, like all of this. Like it I think that's one of the things I challenge us in more in our world is like when you feel something, tell someone. And
Mhm.
so if you were listening today and if you listen to Steph often and you don't tell her that you listen to her podcast and you enjoy her podcast and here's what you've learned from it, tell her. And if there's something that I said today that you want me to go deeper on, you have a curiosity of, you want to speak more on, like I'd be honored to know that you listened and then that you had a question for me. And so reach out, ask that, and maybe that can fuel our second episode too, right? If
Yeah.
you have questions in that way. And when we post this, you can comment on Steph's post. Holla, there it is.
Yeah,
This
there you go. I have
look
to
at
throw it
you.
up there so people
You're
know
so
where to go.
fancy, girl.
You can
Fan-
comment below or you can visit at the storytelling coach and tell her directly.
She's a professional, y'all. But the
Done it
thought
once or
there is
twice.
like I would love to know more of what you want to know, right? Let's curate episode 2 together based off of what resonated, and stories are so powerful. And if you take anything, I want you to hear me that your story is one of those.
Mhm.
If you're listening and saying, yeah, not me, that's just not true. And the stories we live, or the stories we believe, are the stories we will live. And so rewrite your story, step into the story you want to be in. You have incredible people around you already. If you're in Steph's circle and you're listening to her podcast, whether you know her personally or you don't, you have support for this next season. And I really get fired up. Like I truly get so fired up when I think about more people sharing more stories, because what that does for us collectively as a society is it creates stronger connection. And
Yeah.
we know that humans need connection. And so
Yep.
more of this, more heart, share what matters to you, allow yourself to be seen, be brave, because as soon as you allow yourself to be seen, you invite other people to do the same.
100%. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. Morgan, I have just a few more questions for you. And I am personally curious about the answers to these questions.
Ooh, all
So
right.
I haven't, well, I'm personally curious about every question that I asked you, but like maybe a little bit extra curious about these next few
Okay, I
questions.
like it.
My first question is, what do you believe has been the secret to your success thus far?
Hmm. My faith,
Mm.
my faith of others having faith in me and belief in me that I can, and my faith in myself to trust that I am called to do this work. And the Pursuit of Excellence podcast is such a great title because I do really believe that if we're not pursuing for excellence in everything that we're doing, then what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
The people that have supported me and been in my corner, because sometimes in different chapters, we have to borrow other people's truth.
Mm.
There's been so many seasons where I probably didn't believe it myself, but other people believed it for me, and I got to go, okay, I'm gonna borrow that. I don't really feel it right now, but I'm gonna trust you. And I'm really grateful for their strength that I got to lean on in certain seasons and brought me to where I am now.
What a gift.
Yeah, you're part
That
of that.
is such a
So
blessing.
thank you.
Of
I mean,
course.
truly, your friendship has been such a gift to me, and to think about how many seasons of life we've done together. Ups, downs, the exciting things, right? Like so much life has happened, and to have true friendship that holds space for you in that, I pray that everyone feels that they have that.
Me too. Me too. Okay, I'm going to go on a tangent for just a split second, but I was listening to a podcast just yesterday, I think it was, maybe it's the day before, all about friendship and the importance of friendship. And they were talking about how people tend to think about friendship in the sense of, when I'm going through a hard time, who are the people that I would call? And they said, it was Simon Sinek who was saying this. He said, actually, I think a better marker of friendship is if I'm experiencing something really exciting
Mm.
and I've achieved a goal or I just got engaged or something really fun and exciting that I'm proud of that I want to share with people, who do I call? And he
Mm.
said, I think that is a better marker of friendship because those are the people who you know will support you in the down times and the times that you're being challenged and you're struggling, because when they support you when you're already up, you know they're not jealous, you know they're
Mhm.
not, they don't want things from you. And maybe that, as I'm saying that, maybe that could be like a little bit it sounds a little bit backwards because you might
No,
think,
no, I think you're dead on. I think you're dead on with that, and I love Simon Sinek. I love everything he has to
yeah,
say in that way, and his start with why is a so
so
much of the research and the work that I have done in that
mhm,
way, and, so I'll double down on most everything he says in that
mhm,
sense, but I do believe that, like, the people that champion you when things are going well for you, even if they're not going well for them,
mhm.
those are true friends.
Yeah.
See your season of excitement and champion and get excited about your season, knowing that theirs is still coming. But I'll
Mhm.
be there for you. That's friendship for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. Okay, my next question is sort of a two-part question.
Okay.
In the story of your life, what chapter are you in right now?
Hmm.
And what chapter or what yeah, what chapter are you writing next?
Hmm. I'm in my building era
Yes, ma'am.
where I'm in
Mhm.
stride. I am building a business and building a legacy. I recently have been reflecting and praying a lot on what I want this business to do and be, especially when I'm not here. And I
Mhm.
don't want it to die with me. I want it to evolve and grow and continue to create connections for generations to come. And so I'm in my building phase of sustainability in that way, and really trying to identify what are my true gifts that are so unique to me that if I don't unearth, it's a disservice to our collective community. So
Mhm.
my building era and staying strong in that, and grit comes up for me a lot in that, right? Like building is not easy. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of defeat
hard.
in the building season,
Yeah, it's hard
And
work.
so I'm in that, and I'm also in a yeah, the next season is kind of piggybacks on that, is like once you feel that something is working, and allowing yourself to like rest in that a little bit, but then always pursue the excellence of what's next,
Mhm.
and think about how I can take this to the next level, serve more people in a different way. And I personally am so grateful. I was just recently married in September, and my partner
We
is
love Matt.
praise be, my partner has become an incredible gift to me and has just allowed me to truly step into who God called me to be. And I can't wait to see what we do together, and feel really, really excited about that. So to be continued.
Yes, yes. I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thanks.
Truly. I cannot wait. I'm so
Thank you.
excited for you.
Yeah.
I can't even articulate the level of excitement that I
Thank
have for you and what's to come and the lives that you're gonna touch.
you.
Oh, man. It's
Thank
too much. It's too
you.
much. It's so
Well, and I
incredible.
do believe that, like, we have to physically envision ourselves safe in those next chapters to walk into them. And
Mhm.
so I think that's for me, is maybe I have been holding myself back from that even, or not allowing myself to really truly dream in a way that isn't, like that's the scary part. And so
Mhm.
I will say that I thank you, and I accept that, and I receive that. And also I feel like the little butterflies inside of me are like, oh my gosh, like that's kind of a little bit of a like a call out of like, okay, like here you go, and what are you going to do with that next? And
Mhm.
I just want people, if they're listening and watching this, to know that I'm right alongside them, and we're building it together, and
Yeah.
we're stronger together than we are apart. And so if you see yourself in my story at all, just know that I'm championing you, and it's an honor to share, and hopefully make something just a little bit easier for you, because so many people made it just a little bit easier for me. And that's my prayer too, is that I can share something that helps you get further, because if you get further, then we all go further, and that's
Mhm.
something I truly believe.
I love that. I love that, and I love you
I love you
so
back.
much, so much.
Thank you.
Morgan, thank you so much for sharing your time, your stories, your energy, your just everything about you is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of it with us today, and I look forward to part 2 whenever that happens. Um, look out for Morgan,
Thank you.
coachmorganmarie.com. Is that the correct?
That's right.
Okay, yeah.
Nailed it.
coachmorganmarie.com. If the stories that she shared today resonated with you, or you are hearing what she has to say and you think, actually, I could really use some help with crafting some stories for my business, or for my next interview, whatever it is, for my next pitch, please reach out to Morgan. I promise you, you will be so glad that you did. You'll be so glad that you did. Morgan, I love you. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.
I love you back, Steph. Keep pursuing excellence. Thank you. Thank you.
Peace. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button or leave a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that the next time I put out a video, you'll be the first to know. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video.